You know the hate this movie's been getting lately? Kinda deserves it. Okay, so I just got back from this one, and all I really have to say about it is. Mm. Alright, now, in complete and total fairness, a lot of people are really just blowing up how bad the movie really is. It's not 100% awful, but it does have a short list of problems. Oh, yeah. Not a whole lot of positives to say, though, so I guess what I'll do is I'll try to be as nice about the negative things as I can. Kick it off with the first and most glaring problem of the movie. You have a movie about the Fantastic Four, the first family of superheroes. Literally. And the characters have about as much on-screen chemistry as a rock and a twig. And that was just one of the character problems. Another one of the most prevalent ones is a lot of forced romantic dialogue between Reed and Sue. Yeah, we know they end up together inevitably, but guys, come on. Now, granted, it's not Attack of the Clones level bad, but it's still really, really crummy and cheesy, not in a good way. But even that's not the biggest problem. The most prevalent issue is that all the character development and arcs are buried under mountains of technobabble and exposition. And because of that, a lot of the character motivations don't really add up, and a lot of the character arcs just aren't resolved. Shortly after getting their powers, Reed just up and abandons the movie for a good 20 to 30, maybe 40 minutes of it. What was he doing this whole time? Oh, it's heavily implied that he was using that time to try and fix the problem. Except there's no payoff to that. The government, we'll get back to that, sends someone after him and they apprehend him. And it's never brought up again. Now, I don't think I'm spoiling anything by telling you this, but for about half of the movie, Ben has a real problem with Reed. Namely, turned him into a giant rock creature. This is Fantastic Four 101, okay? Ben initially blames Reed for the accident that caused him to turn into a giant rock creature. That's in every Fantastic Four anything ever. The problem here is that in this movie, that whole arc exists for about 2 scenes. And at the end of the movie, it's miraculously gone. Another major problem, however, is in the representation of the Invisible Woman. Namely, how frickin' useless she is. I mean, yeah, they show that she's still just getting used to her powers and everything, but in the final fight, she does pretty much nothing. In fact, the only character with any decently done arc is Johnny, aka the Human Torch. And his isn't really resolved either, it just kind of ends. Why is that? Because the portion of this movie that isn't slave to the exposition and technobabble is all really dull action scenes. I'm serious. Now, the first action scene, them getting their powers, there's a little bit of tension in that, but that's only really because we aren't familiar with how this team gets their powers, because they're not using the whole spaceship cosmic rays thing. Action sequence 2, almost 30 minutes away in the movie, if not more, is over in 5 seconds. In said action sequence, there's no tension at all. One character beats up a few people with relative ease, another character shows up, beats him with relative ease. In fact, he beats him in one move. But oh, the biggest sin of the action sequences is that final battle. That was so lame. When the 2005 and 2007 Fantastic Four movies have more exciting action sequences than you, there's a problem. Oh, but now let's talk about that government thing that I brought up earlier. The government is the main antagonist of this movie for the first 2/3 of it. Ignoring how that isn't even remotely conducive to story structure at all, I'm getting really, really sick and tired of all these government subplots. Can we please just have just one fanciful, whimsical superhero comic book movie that doesn't have the government in it ruining everything for everyone? Oh, but we've only scratched the surface, folks. You know how the Fantastic Four is really frickin' goofy and silly and comic booky? It was the first Silver Age comic for Marvel. I don't know if you know this, but the Silver Age is really darn silly. And how did they address that miss? They didn't. It was one of the most unfunny things I've ever seen. Even the beats in which they were actually trying to be funny didn't work. In fact, the movie isn't just unfunny, it's also really dreary. After they get their powers, granted that's about halfway through the movie, everyone's just so frickin' miserable. Now, I'm not going to blame any of this on the casting. In fact, I think the movie had a pretty good cast. But the kid playing Mr. Fantastic, Miles Teller, that's his name, whatever his name is, he delivered one of the most wooden performances I have ever seen in a superhero movie. I'm talking Hulk 2003 level 2x4 here. But I can't blame him. The script is awful. Maybe it wasn't entirely the script, maybe it was the editing. Maybe all the good portions of the movie that came from the script were edited out of the movie for whatever reason. But that doesn't really change the fact that from what I saw, the script gave him nothing to work with. Now you could argue all day to me that Reed Richards is not the most socially magnetic guy, but even he has some level of punch to his character, otherwise no one would have liked him from the start. But here is one of the film's greatest crimes. The powers of the Fantastic Four are all symbolic, but they're not actually random. Their powers represent their personal traits and flaws. Ben is a big softie, but because of his background and where he grew up, he had to develop a tough outer shell. Thus the rock skin powers. Johnny is a hothead. Do I need to explain that further? Sue, living her life more or less in her brother's shadow, just tended to blend into the background, i.e. the invisibility. And with this she developed walls to keep people out. And of course there's Mr. Fantastic. Reed is a guy who's so hard-pressed to be the best at everything he sets out to do that he stretches himself to get there, thus isolating him more and more from actual human beings. In the movie, none of that is used. In fact, in the movie, Reed isn't really all that socially inept at all. Ben isn't really shown to be a softie at all, heck, he flat out murders a crap ton of people. Susan does kind of put walls up around herself by funneling out with music, but she doesn't really do all that much blending into the background. Johnny, however, they more or less got right because he's a hothead. He is probably the easiest one to get out of all four. But oh, I've been saving the best for last. Oh my. Notice how I said the government was the central antagonist of this movie for the first 2/3. The last third is reserved for a certain Victor Von Doom. You are not worthy, my friend. You really aren't. Okay, where do I begin? I can't believe it, but the 2005 and 7 Doctor Doom actually got it more correct than this one did. Do you know how hard that sentence is for me to say? In this movie, Doom is just a whiny, nihilistic jerk who has a crush on Susan. That's it. Our world is screwed, time to blow it up and start over. That is literally his motivation for the movie. A motivation introduced in the last 25 minutes. Where's Doom for the rest of the movie? In the first third of it, he's working with the team. In the second third of it, he's missing from the movie, completely absent. You're supposed to believe he's dead, but really. And when he comes back, probably one of the lamest on-screen villains I've ever seen in a superhero movie. Ignoring how easy it is for them to beat him despite him wailing on them right before that, he just is not Doom. Doom is the epitome of a self-made man. He is tied for the smartest human being in the Marvel Universe. He has no supernatural abilities of his own. He learned magic and he learned science. Those are not his superpowers. Nothing gave that to him. He went and he learned it. And it is because of this self-made perfection, basically, that Doom has developed this massive ego. One that says, Doom is better than you. He knows he's better than you. And when he's through, you're going to know he's better than you. And he genuinely believes that the only means by which the world can prosper in the future is if he's running it. That's it. Doom is motivated purely by his ego. He's better than you because he's Doom. That's all the reason he needs. And it is pitiful that, thus far, we have yet to see a good representation of him. For anyone wondering, Dr. Doom is my favorite comic book supervillain. Because the concept behind him is so simple. He wants to take over the world because he's better than everyone who runs it already. And that is not a hard thing to write. In fact, stepping away from that, the Fantastic Four is not a hard thing to write. The movie does a lot of speechifying pertaining to the need for people to work together and cooperate in order to make the world a better place. But the fact of the matter is that that really isn't the theme of the Fantastic Four. So devoting your movie to being an extended team-building exercise, when, by the way, your four leads don't have any screen time together until the last 25 minutes, I'm dead serious, you're kind of failing to A, understand what makes the Fantastic Four so great, and B, use basic storytelling conventions. Ones you introduced! Now, I could talk for a while as to the perceived flaws with this movie. But I don't really want to go on and on about how the effects look like something from 2002. I don't want to talk about the fact that the score of the movie, the music, doesn't get interesting until the last 10 minutes. Primarily because there was nothing of interest happening up to that point that warranted the good music. I don't want to talk about how much of the movie the main characters spend apart from one another. I want to talk about the one ray of light in this movie, which is the cast. Aside from Doom, I still feel like that one was a misstep. The cast does as well as they can with what they're given. I'm really trying to give the movie a fair shake. I am, but I can't think of anything really positive to say. At least nothing that isn't like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And you want to know what makes it sting the most? This movie existed purely so they could keep the rights to the Fantastic Four, so they wouldn't revert back over to Marvel. And it stings so much, not because we won't see the Fantastic Four in the cinematic universe, because honestly I couldn't care less about that. I never felt that the Fantastic Four really fit all that well into the rest of the Marvel U. What I'm upset about is that we're probably never going to get a good Doctor Doom. But I have said my piece, so I'll leave you with those kind of ripe opinions and be on my way. Thanks for watching, guys.